Cadmus natisi kasu ni tukama kaniwin Cowessess isquingwinik. I say good morning to you all. My name is Chief Cadmus Delorme of the Cowessess First Nation. Before I begin on the Maryville Residential School story, I just wanted to emphasize that the recent story of the Kamloops Residential School, 215 found graves, has triggered many across this country. And I just wanted to start off by reading two numbers that anybody that what I will share that may re-trigger that you can call. If you are looking for the residential school line to help with mental emotional, you could call it 1-866-925-4419. If you're more local in the Treaty 4 territory in southern Saskatchewan, we do have a line that's going to be open this afternoon. We have partnered with Regina Treaty Status Indian Services, and you could call them at 306-522-7494. In 1886, the Roman Catholic Church in the Oblates arrived on Cowessess First Nation. And that is when the grave site began. In 1898, the Maryville Residential School opened its doors, and it closed its doors in 1996. The Roman Catholic Church overseen the grave site. The Catholics and the prayer and religion overseen the grave site. We started our radar penetrating research on June the 2nd of 2021. As of yesterday, we have hit 751 unmarked graves. This is not a mass grave site. These are unmarked graves. Over the past years, the oral stories of our elders, of our survivors, and friends of our survivors have told us stories that knew these burials were here. In 1960, there may have been marks on these graves. The Catholic Church representatives removed these headstones, and today they are unmarked graves. At this time, I'm just going to share my screen so you have a visual of what we're talking about. You're going to notice that there are flags, and I apologize, it might be a little tough to see. But this is now today on Cowessess First Nation, and this is what we call today our community gravesite. It became our community gravesite after the 1970s, when the residential school was stopped overseen by the Roman Catholic Church and the Archdiocese. We also wanted to show you a little more of a visual from a drone perspective. Of the 751 hits, the machine has a 10 to 15% error percentage. So we will only go by the hits that we have of 751. But we do know there's at least 600. You're going to notice that they are in proper order. These that lay here are 1 meter by 1 meter apart in some cases. We cannot affirm that they are all children, but there are oral stories that there are adults in this gravesite as well, because it was the Roman Catholic Church that overseen this gravesite. Some may have went to the church and from our local towns, and they could have been buried here as well. This could be triggering to many, but when you're from Cowessess First Nation, or you have attended the Maryville Residential School, which many have in southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we always knew that there was graves here. The recent story of the Kamloops Residential School has triggered many in this country, and we knew this was going to trigger as well. There are many agree to disagree from Cowessess on the history of this gravesite. But I want to affirm to you, we are talking about unmarked graves. We're not talking about a mass gravesite. Today in this country, First Nations people, and this instant Cowessess, we've never ever swayed away from who we are as a Nehiyawak and Anishinaabe people. The Roman Catholic Residential School has impacted us intensely. And today we have generations that may have not went to residential school, but they are feeling the first and second generation of that impact. All we ask of all of you listening is that you stand by us as we heal and we get stronger, and that we all must put down our ignorance and accidental racism of not addressing the truth that this country has with Indigenous people. We are not asking for pity, but we are asking for understanding. We need time to heal, and this country must stand by us. We have reached out to the Government of Canada. The Prime Minister, Minister Bennett, Minister Miller have reached out and told us that they stand beside us in what they can help with today. I have reached out, and they have reached out to me, the Roman Catholic Church, our archdiocese in this region. His name is Don, and we have talked as well. What we are going to be doing now is we are going to be putting names to these unmarked graves. We want to honor our loved ones that lay there today. We want to make sure that we keep that place and preserve it so many could come here and heal. It's going to hurt in the coming months because the more we put names to them, the more that it is going to reopen some of the pains that many endured at the Maryville Residential School are going to reopen. The gravesite is there, and it's real. And if you were to see it, there are 751 flags when you look at it. It is the pain of the memories of being in the school for many that it is triggering. And that's why I thank all of the messages, everyone listening, that I ask you to open your mind that this country needs to have truth and reconciliation. There's going to be many more stories in the future, and this is Cowessess First Nations moment of our truth. In the coming days, we will continue to do our research, and one day there will be a monument there. Every one of those graves will be marked, and probably not every grave will have the exact name, but that is our end goal. I thank you all for giving us this moment to tell our story. And I just want to rephrase, this is not a mass grave site. These are unmarked graves. And we didn't remove these headstones. Removing headstones is a crime in this country. And we are treating this like a crime scene at the moment. And we will know more as we continue our research. Again, to the ones that are listening that have went to residential school, that are descendants of residential school survivors, there are numbers available for you to call, and you are not alone. At this time, I just wanted to give a moment for our knowledge keeper, Florence Barbier, to come and share a few words before Chief Bobby Cameron. Florence? Yeah, right there. Just speak into there.
Okay. I'm 80 years old, and I went to boarding school down there. I was taken by my parents to go. At that time, if the parents didn't want to allow their children to go to boarding school, one of them had to go to jail. So in order that we keep the family together, we went to boarding school. They brought us there, we stayed there. And we learned, they pounded it into us, and really, they were very mean. When I say pounding, I mean pounding. Those nuns were very mean to us for, I don't know, I don't think they liked it being there either. But we had to learn how to be Roman Catholic. We couldn't say our own little blessings the way we said it at home. We had our own way of honoring ourselves and Mother Earth in our own homes when we were little, but we had to leave all that after. So when we were taught at home that we had to look after ourselves physically, mental, emotionally, and spiritual. So that got all stripped away when we went to boarding school. They told us what to say. They told us about a new being that was supposed to be our ultimate savior. But the ones we had in our school, they were not nice either. They were very condemning about our people. They told us our people, our parents and grandparents had no. They didn't have a way to be spiritual because we were all heathens. And I was the third one in my family that went to that school. My grandmother went, and my mother and me. So they were still teaching that all the time. So they were putting us down as a people. So we learned how to not like who we were. And that has gone on and on, and it's still going on. Because we couldn't teach our people, our own families, how to look after themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritual. They made us, when we became assimilated, they made us think different and feel different. So it's a lot of the pain that we see in our people right now comes from there. Mm-hmm. So, and I went to another school, Little Brett, also, and that was the same thing. You know, they had. They made us believe we didn't have souls, both places. And that was the ultimate desire of all of us to how can we be better, do better, and sometimes it's really hard to know, and how our parents had our parents and grandparents had a hard life because they were had to be assimilated. So now we know how to do that. We don't have to go back. We just have to learn how to look after ourselves in a good way. So I thank you, Chief, for allowing me to come here and talk a little bit about it. I'm an elder on the reserve. I have a sweat lodge. I stopped it now because I want somebody else to do it. But if you need an elder, people want to come, they can come. I have a lodge. My husband had built me a little lodge, so that's where I see people. I don't tell them anything. I don't tell anyone who's there, but I'm busy. Thank you.
Back to you, Larissa. Thank you, Florence.
Thank you very much, Chief. We will now have Chief Bobby Cameron. Tony, can you please pin Chief Cameron's screen? Chief Cameron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Larissa.
Perfect. All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Yep. Just for the record,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, this is FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron. He is the Chief of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, which represents the 74 First Nations in Saskatchewan. Chief, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, good morning. I want to say dansen wago magantik. Nigan mantu kanaskaman miogisagal megwats. Egwa no kum no. Go kum no kanaskum tinigagi sumwan. Igagi sumwa. First and foremost to our God, our Creator, for a beautiful day today. To our Nokum, our knowledge keeper, our elder, for the opening prayer, thank you. Chief Cadmus and your community for the challenging work that you have just completed. We are grateful and thankful in our prayers to each and every one of your families there in Cowessess. And to all that are on the line, that are listening, you have important work to do in terms of getting the message out there for the world to understand what we First Nations have endured for many, many decades within the residential school era, the 60s scoop, the day schools, and currently in the child welfare system, where there has to be and must be immediate change, where our First Nation children come home to our communities and be raised in our communities amongst our own language and culture experts. This was a crime against humanity, an assault on First Nation people. We are proud people. The only crime we ever committed as children was being born Indigenous. A lot of work, a lot of healing will take place. There are many sites that we're going to be doing this similar work, and we will find more. So we ask for each and every one of you to continue to work with us, to continue to pray for us. We call on all levels of government to work with us, and which they are. But in terms of the healing and the aftermath of moving forward for our survivors and descendants, what are the expectations and what are the outcomes? I would also like to say this on behalf of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, that we pray for all of these children, their families, and the community of Cowessess. To all our First Nation people, please take care of yourself. Please take care of each other. We are seeing the results of the genocide that Canada committed here. Genocide on our treaty lands. We will find more bodies, and we will not stop until we find all of our children. We will do a search of every Indian residential school site, and we won't stop there. We will also search all of the sanatoriums, the Indian hospitals, and all of the sites where our people were taken and abused, tortured, neglected, and murdered. We will tell the stories of our children, of our people who died, who were killed by the state, by the churches, and we won't stop until we locate all of them. The world is watching Canada as we unearth the findings of genocide. We had concentration camps here. We had them here in Canada, in Saskatchewan. They were called Indian Residential Schools. Canada will be known as a nation who tried to exterminate the First Nations. Now we have evidence. Evidence of what the survivors of the Indian residential schools have been saying all along for decades, that they were treated without humanity. They were tortured, they were abused, and they seen their classmates die. They even had to dig graves for their own fellow students. Can you imagine that? These stories will come out. Canada will have to work with us in the spirit of reconciliation. Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Scott Moe have committed to doing this. And we will go the distance on this. We expect and demand a full and public independent inquiry into the genocide. We need to verify causes of death and identify these children. Our people deserve more than apologies and sympathies, which we are grateful for. Our people deserve justice. Canada can start by handing over all of those records. The churches can start by handing over all of those records. To all of our allies, we need support as we grieve. This is just the beginning of the number of children who will be found. As I mentioned earlier, we won't stop until we find them all. I want to say this on a lasting note. We try to put ourselves in the eyes and the bodies of these children who are now being found in the ground, who have been waiting for decades to have a proper burial and to be honored properly amongst our own protocols, traditions, and customs. And a small First Nations voice said, "They found us. They found us." Thank you for listening to me this morning.
Thank you very much, Chief Cameron. We'll now turn it to some questions. I see Elmer, I don't want to butcher your last name, so if you could just unmute yourself and introduce yourself, your agency, and your question, please.
Thank you very much, Larissa. My name is Elmar Tewissen with ZDF Public Television from Germany. Thank you very much for sharing the information with us. And thank you both to Chief Cameron, but also Chief Delorme for the information. May I ask the question what the response of the Catholic Church was when you reached out to them? And number two, if there are any written records available that might be helpful in order to find out the identities of the people who are buried in those graves.
Thank you very much. The Roman Catholic Church from the region area, the Archdiocese, his name is Don. Don has been to the site a few times and has committed to helping with what we want. Beyond Don, that as far as Cowessess has reached out to. In 1970, give or take a year or two, our records were removed from Cowessess, and from one of our knowledge keepers said that they were moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba. She tried to keep one of those books when she was a young worker under the Oblates. And she mentioned that they were threatening to charge her for keeping those records So she was able to keep one of those books, and we now have that information of the others. The oral stories, as well as our strong Kokums and Mushums grandparents, help bury many, and so they have written records, oral stories. So we've been trying to capture those, and we have full faith that the Roman Catholic Church will release our records. They have not told us no. We just don't have them yet. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next person. Just on my screen, I have Julio. If you can please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, thank you. My name is Julio Rivas from EFE News, Spain. First of all, I'm sorry to hear what happened, and I'm truly thankful that you are sharing with us and taking time to talk to us. People all over the world are really in shock to hear what happened here with the residential schools and the indigenous people, especially in a country like Canada. What would you say to people abroad about Canada and what happened here? And secondly, what do you feel is needed from the Canadian government and the Catholic Church, the Vatican, after what you are telling us?
Thank you. The Pope needs to apologize for what has happened to the Maryville Residential School, impact on Cowessess First Nation survivors and descendants. An apology is one stage of many in the healing journey. To make a message abroad, Indigenous people in this country are survivors, and now the descendants are still in an intergenerational trauma stage for some. Canada is addressing the surface of the many pains that we endure. And the bureaucracy of the government of Canada and the province have a lot of work yet to do. As one chief who did not go to residential school, but is a descendant of residential school survivors, and as the spokesperson for 4,300 people, many have went to residential school, we understand the pain. We feel the aftermath. Canada can move quicker, but they are making progress. We have seen some changes and investment, which is helping us in our healing journey. When it comes to First Nations, we have to decolonize the bureaucracy to open up more for Cowessess and other First Nations to truly be a political self-governing nation. And that is where we're going to see the true healing. We're tired of being told what to do and how to do it. We are smart enough and ready to do it ourselves. And Canada one day, hopefully when my 4-year-old is old, will have reconciliation through and through the spirit and intent, so Indigenous people and Canada can thrive on this land together. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Chief. We're going to move on to the next person on the list. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. It's Asikan K. Can you please introduce yourself and your agency?
Hi, my name is Catherine Desakin. I'm a member of Cowessess First Nation. Chief Cadmus, I have a question. The Cemetery Act of Saskatchewan you said that was illegal to build over graves, removal of headstones. Was there an act that respected this before this act was in place in 1999?
Well, good morning, cousin. I would have to follow up with you on that one. That is a very good question. Today in 2021 and years prior, it is illegal to remove headstones. These were removed in 1960. I would have to go back into the legal side of the Cemetery Act of Saskatchewan to see if an act in 1960 is valid in 2021. So I thank you for your question, but I would have to look into that one a little more before I answered it.
Thank you, Chief. Next up, we have Arthur White-Crummy. Please introduce yourself and your agency and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Arthur White-Crummy here from the sorry, I have a slight stutter, from the Regina Leader Post. I just wanted to ask for a bit more clarity on the specific number here. You said 751, that you had found signs of 751, but you also said at least 600. And I just wanted to get a sense of how certain we are of that 700 and of that 751 number, and how you pinpointed that specifically. How certain are we of that?
Thank you. This is phase one, and there are other phases that us on Cowessess will be addressing in the future. Phase one covered 44,000 square meters. It is a defined area of the Roman Catholic gravesite. The ground penetrating radar that was used, we partnered with an institution in Saskatchewan called the Saskatchewan Polytechnic, and they have been very open-minded in helping us from our perspective. As of yesterday, they have hit 751 hits. We can't confirm if there is more than one under that hit, but we have confirmed that they're 1 meter by 1 meter for quite a bit of the gravesite. We asked the technical team, what is the margin of error of this 751? And they told us 10%. So we want to make sure when we tell our story that we're not trying to make numbers sound bigger than they are. So we have 751 hits as of yesterday. And with a 10% error, I gotta admit, math is not my favorite. I like to say over 600, just to be assured. In the coming weeks, each of these hits will be assessed by a technical team, and we will get a verified number in the coming weeks. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Arthur. Our next question, Dylan Roberts.
Hi there, this is Dylan Robertson from the Winnipeg Free Press. Kinanaskamitnau now. Thanks so much for speaking with us. Chief Delorme, could you please tell us where the children at the school had come from? I think you mentioned there might be some kids from Manitoba, and I was just wondering if you know which nations inside and outside of Saskatchewan the children came from.
Thank you for speaking a little bit of Cree. There was a if the Indian agent and or priest on our reserve was Roman Catholic, the Maryville Residential School was the southeast part of Saskatchewan and southwestern part of Manitoba. The Roman Catholic residential school that you had to go to if that's what the Indian agent of the day and or priest baptized the children. if you were united, you went to maybe Birtle or somewhere else. So I can't pinpoint any nations in Manitoba at this moment, as I would have to go back into my records. But I have been advised from oral stories of survivors that some southwestern areas of Manitoba did go to Maryville. As far as central Saskatchewan went to Maryville. And a majority are from the Treaty 4 territory, the southeast specifically, White Bear, Ochapowace, Kakawishtahow, Cowessess, Zagame. But I just want to mention, when I name these First Nations, that there are people watching that would think of their Kokomin Mushum at this time, or maybe they did attend that. Please reach out to the number if this is triggering when we're getting very specific. So I hope that answered your question.
If I could just follow up, I understand you mean Treaties 4 and Treaty 2 areas, but probably not children from outside, like Treaty 1 or 5?
I can't confirm that. But at this time, from the oral stories, the region was Treaty 4 and Treaty 2, correct.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up shortly here, so we'll ask a couple of more questions. Jesse Anton, I have next on there. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi there. Yes, this is Jesse Anton from CBC Saskatchewan. Thank you, Chief, for this. I know it can't be an easy day, so we appreciate it. I have two questions. One, what does this discovery on Cowessess maybe tell us about the total number of unmarked graves in Saskatchewan, and are there plans now with new federal funding to continue the search for more on Cowessess? I know you mentioned this is only phase 1.
Thank you. The federal government, Minister Miller, Minister Bennett, both reached out when this story was starting to become a story publicly, and their office reacted very quickly in a good way. This is phase 1. We're going to identify all the names we can using all the records. Very optimistic. The Roman Catholic Church is going to work with Cowessess. With our oral stories and our written, we will put a headstone and a name to each of them. We do have stories, and please, I'm going to say something that may trigger some, but if you weren't baptized, or if somebody had a baby that maybe was not old enough to be baptized, there was a strong Catholic belief at one time that you couldn't be buried in the gravesite. And so we are going out of our way to help those ones that are today telling us this story. And we have already helped a few of them locate the site where the priest told them they had to bury. So we include those in phase 1. But phase 2, we do have some other locations on our First Nation that were orally told to us, and this is going to be years in the making. We do ask and have been given, verbal consent that investment will continue to happen for us to 100% one day locate all these grave sites in our future phases.
Chief, just one more question here. I'm wondering, this is a huge news story. It's gaining worldwide attention. The world is listening. What would you like them to know about these discoveries in residential schools?
The truth is there. Everybody has to reset maybe the ignorance or the accidental racism that the education system has told before it is already being changed. And investment in healing from the core outwards has to happen. Once truth is given and told and accepted, then reconciliation will prevail. Cowessess First Nation, we enjoy working with Canada. We enjoy our settler Canadian friends and neighbors. What we don't enjoy is that life is better off the reserve than on the reserve. And we don't want that for our children. Coming to the reserve should be, it is a blessing for family kinship. But infrastructure, lack of services, and the intergenerational trauma of addictions, of child welfare, we would rather spend our energy on economic self-sustainability, political sovereignty, and being proud Nehewak and Anishinaabe people. We're ready to do that, and we need Canada and the world to stand beside us and help Cowessess be who we know we can be.
Thank you very much, Chief. We are at the end of our session. Those of you that have questions that we didn't have a chance to get to, please send them to communications@fsin.com. I will pass them along to Chief Delorme. He's a very busy man, as you understand. We have a lot going on and a lot of interviews lined up following this. So if you guys would like interviews or have any other questions, please contact us as soon as possible. Chief Delorme, our prayers are with your community at this time. Thank you very much for everyone joining us. We're going to wrap it up now. Thank you.